Around the world, scientists, reporters, and the public in several countries await the arrival of a historic space phenomenon. In a few hours, the largest meteor shower seen in 10,000 years will pass by Earth, and according to experts, the event will occur without major incidents on the planet. However, an asteroid goes unnoticed amid the meteor shower and hits the Moon. The impact causes part of the asteroid to settle in the Moon's core, and some of its fragments to hit different parts of Earth. Fortunately, the planet did not suffer major damage, but at an American observatory, Dr. Maddie realizes that the collision has caused the Moon to move closer to Earth. She then contacts the White House, informing the president that the Moon has entered a new orbit, but the effects of this are still unknown. In the following days, news of tsunamis, electromagnetic interference, and changes in the tides begins to spread through the media. The strangest thing is that these events do not seem to be directly related to the incident on the Moon, and their causes remain a mystery. Dr. Maddie continues to research the matter, but realizing she will need help, she contacts Professor Alex, a former colleague at NASA. The professor, an expert in astrophysics, is surprised by Maddie's call, as the two had been very close years ago. However, since his wife passed away, Alex has decided to pursue a career as a university professor and take care of his children and father-in-law. After filling him in on the situation, Dr. Maddie asks for his help in unraveling these events and their possible connection to the Moon's new orbit. The professor agrees to help, and the two arrange to meet at the university to discuss it. At the end of the call, Alex and Sadie go to watch Jake's baseball game, and in a decisive play, the boy hits a home run. Jake quickly runs around the bases to score the point, but a mysterious electrical discharge spreads across the field. Luckily, no one is hurt, but the professor suspects that this has something to do with the Moon, which seems to be getting closer and closer to Earth. Meanwhile, in Germany, meteor hunter Roland Emerson is informed about a piece of meteorite found in a forest. Believing this to be related to the meteor shower, he goes to the site and finds a huge crater in the ground. In the center of the crater, Roland finds the celestial body, but when he tries to remove it, the meteorite does not move, as if it were stuck by an enormous force. He then asks his assistant to lend him a hammer, but when he does so, the tool is attracted to the crater by a powerful magnetic force. The next day, Maddie goes to meet Professor Alex at the university, and he tells her about the electrical discharge incident at the baseball field. In addition, news reports about tsunamis indicate a change in gravitational force, as if the Moon's mass were increasing. Dr. Maddie doesn't believe this is possible, but seconds later, she receives a call from Roland, who was also her colleague at NASA. He tells her about the meteorite he found, but it is of a type never seen before, due to its strong magnetism. Because of this, he believes that what hit the Moon and Earth was not a mere asteroid, but a failed star, known as a brown dwarf. Roland believes that part of this star got stuck on the Moon, and this is affecting the gravitational energy with the planet. Given this information, Professor Alex fears that humanity is in the midst of a natural event of catastrophic proportions. His suspicions are soon confirmed when Maddie receives another call, this time from her assistant Jared, informing her that the Moon continues to rapidly approach the planet. Alex predicts that at this rate, the two will collide, causing an apocalyptic disaster capable of destroying all life on Earth. With no time to lose, Maddie again contacts the US government, and the president personally invites her to a meeting at the White House. Once there, the doctor reviews what she has discovered in recent days and the possible threat that the Moon poses to Earth. The president then appoints her as the leader of the operation, giving her complete freedom to choose her team and find a way to prevent the destruction of the world. Maddie then calls on Professor Alex and Jared, as well as Roland and his partner Franz, who will be in contact through the German base. Hours later, everyone meets at the monitoring base in Washington and follows in real time how the Moon's orbit around Earth is progressing. Due to its proximity to the planet, Roland believes that in approximately 48 hours, the Moon will reach its closest point. With that, it is likely that new electrical discharges will occur at specific points on the planet, in addition to other unpredictable events. Meanwhile, the population remains unaware of the real situation in the world, and the media demands answers from the government. One of the newspapers decides to take the lead, and the editor CTS David, a freelance reporter who was once married to Dr. Maddie. He even offers him a permanent job at his newspaper if David can get an exclusive story with information about the incident on the Moon. Although they have been separated for a long time, David goes to meet Maddie and asks for her help in getting answers and a job at the newspaper. However, things did not end well between them, and Maddie does not intend to leak information to avoid media panic and sensationalism. She says she cannot help him and leaves to meet Professor Alex for dinner. However, the meeting is soon interrupted by a sudden blackout, and the two soon realize that this is an effect of the Moon at its closest point in its orbit. The two then head to the monitoring base, and the effects of this approach were worse than imagined. In addition to several parts of the world suffering a blackout, people and objects began to float, as if the force of gravity were fluctuating. To make matters worse, electrical systems began to suffer severe interference due to the strong magnetism emitted by the brown dwarf, which remains trapped inside the moon. Realizing that they will not be able to hide the truth for long, several countries issue emergency calls, asking everyone to stay in their homes. Professor Alex does the same and asks Lloyd to take care of his children while he is away. Similarly, Roland calls his fiancée Martina, who is pregnant and has taken a train to visit her mother in another city. He asks her to take shelter somewhere safe in the train cars, but the moon also begins to affect Europe, causing gravity to fluctuate once again. This effect causes the train to float and derail, but as soon as gravitational force returns, the vehicle crashes in an open field. Hours later, the moon continues its orbit and moves far enough away from the planet for gravity to return to normal, as do electrical systems. Although the situation has calmed down, Alex knows that it is only a matter of time before these effects repeat themselves. In addition, the population continues to press for answers, and amid the chaos, the president contacts the monitoring center to find out the expert's position. Unfortunately, the results show that the moon will continue to approach Earth until they collide. According to Professor Alex's calculations, they have approximately 39 days before this cataclysmic event occurs. Maddie also states that if an asteroid was capable of wiping out the dinosaurs millennia ago, when the moon collides with Earth, it will be the end of everything. With Professor Alex's prediction, a countdown begins to save the world from its imminent destruction. While Dr. Maddie and her team think of solutions, far away, Martina and the other survivors leave the train and set out in search of help. Minutes later, Roland receives news of the train accident and tries to contact his fiancée, but is unable to reach her. He then decides to go after her alone, but Franz informs him that the Chancellor has demanded that he go to Washington, as all the experts are being gathered at the monitoring base. Meanwhile, Lloyd continues to take care of Jake and Sadie, but the kids are worried about their father and ask to see him. Their grandfather then decides to take them to Washington, but halfway there, they are hit by a new gravity fluctuation. Soon after, Lloyd's vehicle begins to float in the middle of the road, and the three despair, unable to control the car. Seconds later, gravity begins to normalize, and luckily, they manage to land safely in the field, thus avoiding tragedy. As soon as Lloyd recovers, he calls the kids to continue the rest of the trip on foot. With no idea what happened to his family, the professor, along with Maddie and Roland, who has just arrived at the base, devise a plan to return the moon to its original orbit. Following an old NASA project, Maddie's idea is to push it away using a nuclear explosion. If all goes well, the moon will be closer to the sun, and its gravitational force will put it back into its orbit, thus preventing its collision with Earth. These nuclear explosives need to be carried by high-capacity rockets, but this will require international assistance. For this reason, the group returned to the White House to explain the situation to the President and the General of the U.S. Army. According to the plan, 1,100 nuclear warheads will be needed, which can be obtained in partnership with two military powers, Russia and China. As expected, the general does not agree with the idea of allying with two rival nations and says that another group of researchers has come up with an alternative plan. Instead of moving the moon away, their goal is to use fewer warheads to hit its core. If the plan works, the brown dwarf will also be disintegrated by the explosion, preventing the moon from continuing to approach Earth. Roland is against the idea, because without enough warheads, the explosion could generate meteorites large enough to destroy life on Earth. Faced with two risky options, the president says he will consider them all and choose the one with the best chance of success. The meeting is then adjourned, but as soon as they leave the room, Maddie is called to watch a TV report. In it, David appears giving an interview to a newspaper, saying he has obtained information from a reliable source in the White House. As the president feared, the truth about the moon's collision with Earth has been leaked, and now he needs to speed up plans to avoid panic. Shortly after, Maddie is informed that the president has opted for the solution proposed by the general, and the warheads will be sent within a few hours. Things only get worse when Alex receives a call informing him that Lloyd, Jake, and Sadie are not at home. Amid the growing chaos among the population, Alex fears the worst for his family, but Lloyd continues on the road with his grandchildren. After a long walk, they find an abandoned inn and take refuge there. Upon entering, the kids find a table full of bottles of water and supplies, and take some of them for the trip. However, a man named Derek shows up and tells the kids to leave, saying that it's his merchandise. But just as he's about to kick them out, Lloyd appears to defend his grandchildren and attacks the madman with his cane, knocking him unconscious. However, the effort makes Lloyd feel ill, and he falls to the ground, feeling a sharp pain in his chest. At the same time, the president makes an official statement on TV, trying to calm the country's citizens and promising that this crisis will be resolved soon. Finally, with the warheads assembled, the rockets are launched toward the moon, targeting its core destroyed by the brown dwarf. Across the planet, people watch the ships being sent, which, upon reaching the moon, begin to generate dozens of explosions, but this does not seem to affect its orbit. Back at the monitoring base, Maddie analyzes the computers and realizes that the nuclear warheads have caused an increase in the moon's speed. Now, instead of 39 days, humanity has only 5 days to avoid its own extinction. Faced with this failure, the president contacts Dr. Maddie again, asking for a new solution as soon as possible. Professor Alex fears that it may be too late, but Roland has an idea based on one of the professor's experiments. The group then explains to the president that their plan is to build a magnetism machine invented by Alex, but with reverse polarity. The idea is that instead of creating an attractive force, the brown dwarf and the moon's core will repel each other, causing the failed star to leave its core. If this happens, the moon's mass will be reduced, and it will be able to move away from Earth. However, this machine sends the magnetic force through a rocket, and due to the enormous blast radius, this may be a one-way mission, as the astronauts will not have time to leave the moon. Faced with this critical scenario, the president promises to get help from allied nations, while the general searches for volunteer astronauts. Meanwhile, Jake and Sadie are taking care of their grandfather at the inn, and Lloyd asks the kids to look for medicine in the kitchen. After searching for a while, Jake finds it, but when he tries to take it to his grandfather, Derek pulls his leg and takes the medicine from his hand. Quickly, Sadie throws a bottle of water at the man's head, who drops the bottle, and the boy gives the medicine to his grandfather. The man still tries to resist, but Lloyd threatens him, telling him not to go near his grandchildren. Derek decides to leave the family alone and goes to another room, while Lloyd's condition continues to worsen. The next morning, the president summons Alex and the others, saying that he has secured supplies from allies to build the machine. However, the final assembly must be done on the moon, and none of the astronauts have the necessary knowledge to assemble it. For this reason, the president calls Alex and Roland to participate in the mission, as the fate of the world is in their hands. Upon learning this, Maddie does not accept this decision, and after the meeting, she goes to talk to Alex, hoping to find another solution. However, Alex knows that there is no other way, and asks Maddie to say goodbye to his children on his behalf. The two embrace, and then the professor continues his journey to the military base to begin his training as an astronaut alongside Roland. Far away, Martina and the other survivors find a military camp and take refuge there. Suddenly, she sees a news report on TV showing her husband on the astronaut team and decides to find him at any cost. She then goes to talk to one of the soldiers and asks for a ride to the base where Roland is. At first, he refuses, as there is no more room for passengers, but when he sees that she is pregnant, he allows her to enter the vehicle and offers her a ride there. Meanwhile, Roland and Alex meet Courtney and Sergey, the astronauts responsible for the mission. They put them through rigorous training to prepare them for space, and after hours of training, Roland is informed that his fiancée is waiting for him outside. He quickly goes to meet Martina, who is happy to see him after everything that has happened in the last few days. The two then spend some time together before the mission, and Roland warns her that there is a good chance he will not return. Martina refuses to accept this, but Roland promises that he will find a way to return, and with no time to lose, he asks her to marry him. She accepts without hesitation, and that same day, the two go to church and get married in a private ceremony before the big day. Later, Lloyd continues to be cared for by his grandchildren, while Derek watches everything from afar. However, his health deteriorates more and more, and in his last moments, the grandfather tells the kids a story about his deceased daughter, how she watched over them every night. Although she is gone, Lloyd assures them that she continues to watch over them, just as he will from now on. Finally, Lloyd says goodbye to his grandchildren, who mourn their grandfathers perished, and despite everything, Derek cannot contain his sadness at this moment. However, at dawn, he decides to leave alone, as he now needs to focus on his survival. Before he leaves, Jake asks for his help in finding his father in Washington, and at first, Derek refuses and leaves with his car. However, he ends up having a crisis of conscience and goes back to get them, promising to take them both to their father. Unfortunately, Jake and Sadie don't arrive in time, and as soon as the rockets are ready, Alex, Roland, and the astronauts set off on their journey to the moon. Maddie and her team, as well as Martina, watch everything from the control center, and all they can do is hope that everything goes well. Shortly thereafter, the astronauts arrive at the moon, when suddenly one of the guards informs Dr. Maddie that a man has brought Professor Alex's children. She then takes the children to the control center and puts them on a video call so they can talk to their father. Alex is happy and relieved to see Jake and Sadie again, but learns from them that Lloyd has perished of a heart condition. Jake then asks his father when he will return, but Alex says he does not know the answer. Fearing the worst, he asks his son to take care of his sister in his absence and says goodbye before contact with the base is interrupted. Finally, the ship manages to land on the moon, carrying part of the magnetism machine created by Alex. Now, the rest of the equipment must be assembled on the moon itself, and they only have 6 hours until the moon reaches its limit point, where it can be pushed back into its original orbit. However, one of the pieces of equipment has been damaged and will take longer than expected to repair. The base informs them that this will not be possible, so Roland and Courtney use a propulsion machine to enter the canyon and scan the area, looking for the ideal place to launch the missile. A few more hours pass before Alex finally manages to finish repairing the machine. Meanwhile, Roland and Courtney realize that the canyon is larger than they imagined, and they are still mapping it in search of the target. The two then decide to descend at a faster speed until they finally find the indicated point in the huge canyon. However, they end up colliding with the rock walls, which damages the propeller and causes them to descend uncontrollably. Suddenly, communication is interrupted, and everyone believes they did not survive the impact. Fortunately, the cameras start working again and show Roland trying to pull Courtney, who is hanging from the edge of the rock. He does his best to pull her up, but Courtney slips and falls into an endless precipice at the moon's core. With the loss of his colleague, Roland contacts Alex and Sergei, who are already back on the ship waiting for him. However, Roland informs them that he has lost Courtney, and the thruster has been damaged in the fall, making it impossible to leave the canyon. Even so, he intends to complete the mapping, and as soon as he manages to reactivate the sensor, the computer picks up the target and sends the information to Alex's machine. With only a few minutes left before the orbit limit, the machine finally receives the location and automatically activates the missile, which heads toward the canyon. With time running out, Sergei suggests to Alex that it is possible to return to Earth if they leave now with the rocket. Alex, however, is against the idea, as they need to rescue Roland and leave. But his colleague says there is nothing else to be done, and he is trapped inside the canyon with no way to escape. Facing the end, Roland asks Alex to return to his children, and then writes a message on the rock, indicating that he was on the moon. Martina is forced to watch everything through the cameras and cries for the imminent end of her husband, who, although he cannot return, did everything he could to ensure a future for her and their son. Then, with 10 seconds to go before impact, Sergei activates the ship and leaves with Alex, returning to Earth. Finally, the rocket hits the moon's core, causing a powerful explosion, which, as predicted by Roland and Alex, emits magnetic energy capable of separating the brown dwarf from the moon. With the impact visible in the skies, everyone leaves the base and looks at the moon, which has split into 2 parts due to the explosion. Immediately afterwards, the command center tries to contact the astronauts on the rocket, but receives no response. When all hope seems lost, a call is sent from the spacecraft, with Alex and Sergei having managed to escape the moon's blast radius. After an arduous mission, the two are able to return home, news that makes Maddie, Jake, and Sadie very happy. In addition, when checking the readings on the computer, the moon has returned to its original orbit, and Earth is safe. The next day, Alex is flown home on a plane and remembers his friend Roland, who risked his own life to save his and all of humanity. Finally, upon arriving at the landing strip, the professor is welcomed as a hero by the US Army. Alex then reunites with Jake, Sadie, and Maddie, and the 4 head back home, taking one last look at the moon, which, thanks to the efforts of brave men and women, did not cause the end of life on Earth. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.